Just north of downtown is Hillside Terrace, transformed 2 years ago with a $46 million revitalization and renovation program. The formerly troubled public housing project is now a model for the nation. Hillside, which many now see as just another middle-class Milwaukee neighborhood, was the first Hope 6 project to be completed in the country.
People began to realize that a lot of the infrastructure in public housing was very old, and that to continually invest in just fixing things that were beyond their usefulness was a waste of resources. And so Congress and HUD put together this program called Hope 6, which allows housing authorities to completely revitalize communities.
The Park Lawn housing development is taking its cue from Hillside. Its current renovation project includes new exteriors and landscaping, and even some market-rate housing. Over at Lapham Park, there are more major changes with what's called the townhomes of Carver Park.
Well, a lot of it is really an outgrowth of Mayor Norquist's desire to take communities that were no longer, or weren't seen as viable, at least by the larger community. They certainly were viable if you happened to be living in one of them, but they had all of the outward appearances of distress. And the mayor's concept of knitting those neighborhoods back into the larger city is really what's at work here.
Milwaukee began to show the nation how to turn a blight into an asset with Hillside Terrace. The subsidized housing project, built in 1948, was among the city's most distressed just a few years ago. Crime, litter, crowding, and concrete were among the problems. The first step, demolish 14 buildings and rebuild others, open cul-de-sacs. Today, Hillside is an area of 12 mini neighborhoods connected to the city around it.
And this Hope 6 revitalization project has won a number of national awards for its design creativity and for what we've accomplished in the way of changing the dynamic here in this community. When we first started, only 17% of the families here worked. Today, over 60% of the families work, and that number grows every day. So this has been almost a remarkable transformation of who lives here, why people live here, and why they stay in this community. I think the realization is that all neighborhoods need to be a part of the urban grid, and we've been able to restore that here in this community, and that's what we're doing in a couple of other Hope 6 redevelopment projects that we're working on.
One project they're working on is the Park Lawn housing development. Dating to 1937, it's among the oldest in the country and was built in the same superblock style as Hillside.
We were here first, yet we were not able to be able to reach out and be part of the surrounding neighborhood. So by putting the roads through the development, very important, we're opening up the development. We're going to create here city blocks so that as you drive through Park Lawn, you're doing exactly that. You're driving through just another portion of the city. That people are now going to recognize that there's a lot of beauty that exists here. Trees that were planted back in the 1930s that are some of the larger, more mature deciduous trees in the city. The fact that we have more city streets means we're going to have a safer development. We're going to have more eyes on the street. It's pedestrian friendly. You can see that we've added porches. We got rid of that stereotypical public housing little canopy with the scuppers, and we've restored some dignity to the buildings themselves by adding that porch. We've made the development more livable. We've removed 90% of the hardscape, of the asphalt and the concrete, and we've got grass, we've got plants, and we only have sidewalks where they make sense to have sidewalks. They were built essentially as warehouses for poor people. And we're trying to change not only that concept that people have on the outside, but the reality if you live in one of these developments.
The Park Lawn development includes 20 new single-family homes at 44th and Hope.
We feel that's a major positive. By putting 20 single-family homes, essentially a subdivision, within the context of this development, we are bringing in a different type of housing, which if you live in a regular city neighborhood, you're going to have a mixture of homeowners, you're going to have renters. So we're trying to establish some of that mix here.
Surrounding the high-rise at Lapham Park is another major project and new product, the townhomes at Carver Park. These new townhouse units are replacing the former dense cluster of look-alike red brick buildings that were typical of the public housing programs of the era. They've been demolished in a $21 million overhaul.
We're bringing in 122 new townhomes, and of those, 51 are public housing, 51 are tax credit, and 20 are going to be market rate. yet we make no distinction in the development where those units are. So a market rate unit might be side by side with a public housing unit or a tax credit unit. This is once again the ability for us to help create a neighborhood that knits itself in to the surrounding neighborhood and that gives us a broader range of income while still not displacing our basic mission, which is to serve people who need affordable housing.
Administration of all city public housing is the responsibility of the Milwaukee Housing Authority. Its 7 members oversee ownership and management of over 9,000 units of public housing. The authority includes 2 representatives from the Common Council.
Housing Authority and the role of public housing is to make good, safe, sanitary, quality housing available to people at a low cost. In a wider sense, it gives a quality of life, a chance for quality of life to people in the city of Milwaukee who might not, or in other situations, do not have that possibility.
And once again, it's the safe, quality, and affordable housing that will also provide services for overall economic empowerment, such that our residents could maximize the experience and hopefully be able to secure job opportunities and move through the housing, public housing, to home ownership.
One of the Housing Authority members must be a public housing resident. That post currently held by Jesse Johnson, who lives at College Court on Highland Boulevard.
I think it's a good idea. Now that I'm on this board and I see what goes on here, I think it's a good idea. This way, the resident can have a chance to know what this board is voting on for them, because it do affect the residents, what comes back from this board.
Public housing in Milwaukee is more than providing a place to live. The intent of the Housing Authority is not only to improve the brick and mortar, but help residents grow, to become less dependent on public assistance. To do that, they've incorporated many important social services into the developments.
Hillside Family Resource Center is just an example of that. Within that facility, there's a Boys and Girls Club. There's also the W-2 agency for this area of the city. They operate out of this building. There's a health clinic that is a nurse-managed health clinic that serves this community and the neighborhood. There's also a daycare center on the 6th Street side of the facility, and a Milwaukee Area Technical College Learning Lab within the building. And so pretty much any kind of supportive service that our residents need in order to be successful is available through this center. And we're very fortunate at Parklawn to have a partnership with a YMCA, and it was one of the first YMCAs to be located within a public housing community anywhere in the country. The YMCA is now also partnering with the cyber school, which has just recently been constructed and opened in September here, and serves 400 kids, a charter school, a new charter school. And we have the Right Alternative Family Service Center, another daycare facility. There's a health clinic within the YMCA. So again, we've got an array of services that are available to our residents that really help them succeed. In our high-rise buildings, one of the things that's extremely critical to serve senior citizens and to serve persons with disabilities is you need supportive services. You need partnerships to make that happen. And we're very fortunate at the Lapham Park high-rise to have the Lapham Park Venture. And it's through a partnership with a number of community organizations, Milwaukee County Department on Aging, Combined Community Care for the Elderly, and some others, that we've been able to recreate a vision of old Walnut Street the way it was many years ago into a service mall that really provides a lot of services that make that community almost an assisted living community, which is very unique to public housing anywhere in the country.
Milwaukee's public housing developments are much safer today. The security force is on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Led by a former commander of the police department's Vice Control Division, authority officers answered 5,000 calls for service in 1999.
These are low priority calls for service, normally quality of life violations such as loud music, neighbor problems. Interesting concept of our department is we are able to intervene probably at an earlier stage, which then eliminates the need for police intervention into a situation. We can usually resolve it ahead of time. If it's something of a serious nature, involving weapons or a violent fight, the police department are also dispatched to the scene, and we merely become a supporting agency at that time, furnishing them with any information that they may request on the scene.
Whereas says that for the first 6 months of this year, reported crimes in all local public housing developments are down 40% from the same time in 1999.
We're fueled and funded by drug elimination grants, so that was really my focus. And we've been able to reduce the drug complaints within the Housing Authority by 58% across all of our properties. And if you were to go back 4 years ago, you had the street drug dealing taking place, you had the abandoned cars, you had the trash, the litter. To today, you have children playing, you have flowers growing, you have lawns groomed, you have people cutting their grass, and they're not fearful about going out and walking in their neighborhood. The residents have really bought into it. We have more of an interaction with them. They're more apt to call our department for advice or to report something, and they can do so anonymously, and they know that.
Housing Authority members continue to be aggressive in their approach to federal funding to continue to improve public housing in Milwaukee. The current Hope 6 programs and other ideas have given the city many success stories.
In fact, we have a good percentage of our people pay a higher rate of rent than the basic minimum rent in public housing, and that's because they have jobs and they aren't earning, and they just prefer to stay there. It just creates a better feeling from the people who live in housing. It certainly creates a good feeling for the people who work in housing and service, and it starts to trickle out into the greater community, and it's just one less stigma, one less prejudice that we have to deal with.
Agreement on that issue from Alderman Hines, who grew up in public housing here and hopes to serve as an example to public housing residents.
If you take advantage of those opportunities, those social programs that public housing provides, if you attend regularly the meetings and participate and get involved, that there's more to it and that your future can be as equally as bright as what mine have turned out to be.
It's not a social experiment. What will evolve will happen because we've allowed people to have some opportunity to make choices. We're part of the city. We're proud to be part of the Department of City Development and moving forward with an agenda that says neighborhoods are important. They mean something to people. They mean something to the tax base. More importantly, they mean something to everybody that lives in the city.
This is the beginning of the site. The web address is www.gis.ci.mil.wi.us. This is the first page or the way the site is displayed to you when you first come in. You have data tools here in the center. You can search by tax key, address, or find an intersection. For example, if I go to find an intersection and I key in water and wells and hit submit, the map on the left-hand side will zoom in and show you the details of that intersection.
The city of Milwaukee has long used geographic-based computer information within city government. Now this extensive information can be easily tapped by internet users here and around the world.
The reason why the GIS group put a site like this together is to give people access to maps and to provide data in a little different format. Data allows them to find relationships between properties up and down the block or in a neighborhood or community to find out what's going on. Well, for example, you can find information about whether or not properties are owner-occupied. Now, you could do that now with the assessor's site, but you'd have to go to each individual property up and down the block. With this site, you can find all the owner-occupied properties quickly on a map and show what that relationship is.
I think this has the potential to help city government serve more efficiently, more effectively, save money, and provide higher quality service to our constituents.
In announcing the new site, Mayor Norquist said information in the hands of citizens is empowering. Residents agree. A representative of 15 neighborhood associations, which already uses other property data information on the city website, says Map Milwaukee can pinpoint problem properties in a new way and monitor the progress of landlords in responding to violations.
And the things that we work on are based on safety issues in neighborhoods and housing. Housing is very important, especially nuisance properties. How to identify them and how to work with them and hopefully come to some kind of closure. There is such an accountability with this website, and that's what all residents want to see, accountability.
Using Map Milwaukee, businesses considering relocation or expanding can research land use and zoning, permits, and parcel sizes. Prospective homebuyers can now examine city neighborhoods to learn about individual properties and the neighborhood.
Who the alderman is, what the current assessed value is. It's a single-family home. It's in Police District 6. You notice that there's hot links here. And this is where we take advantage of the data on the websites that have come before this one.
There are a lot of tools here that are going to help anyone considering making a purchase. The Metropolitan Association of Realtors is prepared to help educate its 3,000 members on the benefits of this site and using it in getting homeowners into the city of Milwaukee. When a buyer has a particular home in mind, his realtor can automatically pull up a map and automatically pull up the schools, the parks, where's the fire station, where's the police station, where are the various community centers. 3 clicks of the mouse.
Map Milwaukee builds on past city internet innovations, including sites run by the Assessor's Office and Department of Neighborhood Services.
This site connects up to all the other sites in the city, so we're not duplicating effort. The assessor's data is still the official assessment data, and you'll find that on this site it's hot linked to their page. So we're not duplicating any effort. You can still go to the DNS site and find out all the particulars about a permit, for example. But this site shows you where those permits are happening.
Reaction to the Map Milwaukee site has been good, with 2,000 hits a day. It will serve as a foundation for future website enhancements.
And this is just one of the things that we're trying to do, making data easy to use, providing data that historically is difficult to portray in a tabular form or a text form, where you can, like I said, draw conclusions or relationships.
While the federal government and universities run interactive map-based sites, Milwaukee is one of the first cities in the country to use maps that make so much information available online. If you don't have a home computer, you can access Map Milwaukee at any one of the city's public libraries. These photos represent Milwaukee's Walnut Street from 50 to 70 years ago. They are part of an effort to recreate Walnut Street in the basement of Lapham Park.
That was a center of the African American cultural experience, as well as the area that most of the folks that we're serving right now in our Lapham Park community came from. So it was decided that Lapham would become Lower Walnut Street. The concept itself was an outgrowth of the Housing Authority's efforts to try and provide better care for its elderly residents.
Residents played a key role in the development of the new Walnut Street. The renovation provides a more community-oriented atmosphere and additional space in which seniors can socialize with their neighbors.
Many of the establishments that we have located down in Lower Walnut Street have taken their names or are namesakes of actual establishments that existed at one point in time along Walnut Street. When you're sitting in those chairs and conversing with the person who's cutting your hair or styling your hair, your vision goes out onto a street, much the same as it would have if you were on Walnut Street. It's pedestrian friendly, where we have folks that are walking by. You can see across the street to another establishment that's performing its function. We have a street. It's designed to react to your senses. There are some images of cobblestones that used to exist. Certainly the trolley tracks, which were a large part of our urban experience here in Milwaukee back in that time period, are etched into the street itself. We have sewer covers in the street. We have the harp lights, which also unify the street concept. Those occur throughout the lower level area. We have other artifacts from that time period that hopefully serve to trigger a reminiscence, if you will, in our elderly population. We have display windows that essentially mask some of our infrastructure areas, but they give the illusion of being storefronts. And the windows provide an opportunity for the residents to place memorabilia, to place things that remind them, once again, of that connection to their past. It doesn't necessarily have to be Walnut Street per se, but whatever speaks to them in their past. We have this larger space that we're in that accommodates a large number of folks in a very comfortable setting. It puts them clearly in the setting of Walnut Street, which surrounds them, but it also allows us to bring our meal program, which is sponsored on behalf of the elderly residents. Also, the elderly residents can use the kitchen on weekends or in the evenings if they so choose to host a family event. It's items such as this that we're bringing into many of our buildings that we hope will add to the marketability and the desirability of those buildings so that we can continue the fabric that exists in the community into these towers.
Pretty nice down there, pretty nice. Adequate space, shoot pool, sitting, talking, eating. It's nice. They got a hell of a patio in the back. Make one think he's at the chateau.
The 80-year-old Coleman was among residents, giving students from North Division an oral history of the neighborhood the day we visited. He's lived around Walnut Street most of his life and remembers, as a teenager, shining the shoes of boxer Joe Louis in a tavern on Walnut Street.
I run in there with my little shine box, shine, and the bartender, "Get out of there, let Mr. Lewis alone." And he says, "Yeah," and put his foot on the box. And I shined the shoes, and the shine button was a quarter, but he gave me a $5 bill. And rent wasn't but $15 for the money at the house, you know. Yeah, that was my Walnut Street experience.
The northern wing of Lower Walnut Street is the new home of the Lapham Park venture. It's the first assisted living community in the nation in a public housing development, providing health and social services and an alternative to nursing home care.
The venture includes, it's a partnership between Milwaukee County Department on Aging, SET Ministry, St. Mary's Family Practice, and of course the Housing Authority. Community Care for the Elderly is our other partner here now, and they really take care of a lot of individuals that are sort of nursing home eligible, but they continue to live here. We see it as improving the quality of life of our residents.
The program saved taxpayers $1.1 million in 1999 by allowing seniors to stay at Lapham Park rather than move to a more costly nursing home setting.
If folks can go to these long-term communities in the suburbs or in other parts even of the city of Milwaukee, if you have means, why can that experience not be held out or given to folks that have lesser means, such as the population that we serve? We feel very strongly about that, and we feel that the foundation community has recognized the potential for projects such as this, and we're very happy to see and recognize their participation to the extent that it has contributed almost 50% of the dollars required for this particular project.
Lapham Park has 200 housing units in its high-rise building. The area around it is changing as well. 170 units from the former housing project were demolished to be replaced by 122 new townhomes.
We're putting in new city streets. We're reconnecting Lapham Park to this wonderful area that surrounds it. We will have a combination of public housing units, tax credit units, and some market rate units. And we're very excited about the potential that exists here to have folks living in what we're going to call now the townhomes at Carver Park, due to its proximity to Carver Park, and I think reflecting the fact that this is no longer the Lapham Park housing development, but rather a new entity that should reflect some new concepts. We're hoping that some of those folks might have their elderly parents living in our high-rise, and where we can really knit together a true community here.
The logo of the Harambee Ombudsman Project is illustrated on this poster. It was a group of students from Harambee Community School that were responsible for extending the Swahili name to the neighborhood.
And the children love that name, Harambee, which means let's pull together, meaning the entire community pulling together to overcome an obstacle.
This was a frontier town when the photo of this general store was taken around 1885 at what is now 3rd and Burleigh. Around the turn of the century, Pabst Brewery opened an amusement park at 3rd and Burleigh, including roller coaster and a funhouse called Katzenjammer Castle. The area is now Clinton Rose Park, honoring the area's longtime county supervisor. Harambee is a community of historic homes, many dating to the late 1800s. Among them, what's believed to be the city's oldest house, built on First Street around 1840. Homes run the gamut from modest bungalows to mansions. By 1910, First, Second, and Palmer Streets south of Center were lined with the homes of merchants, manufacturers, and professionals. In 1984, it became an official historic district. The northeast corner of the area, which runs from Holton to I-43, north to Capitol, was for years a large-scale industrial district. The blocks north of Keefe were filled with factories attracted by land and the railroad. They produced everything from shoes to pianos to auto bodies. Upper 3rd Street, with stores like Schuster's at 3rd and Garfield, then Milwaukee's largest department store chain, was a thriving business district. As 3rd Street declined and problems grew in the neighborhood, residents decided to take some actions, with a push from the Harambee students.
The school was founded in 1969. The children motivated the parents with the name Harambee. The parents decided that maybe we should have a Harambee revitalization project.
That led in 1974 to the Harambee Ombudsman Project and a new focus on citizen involvement. Longtime resident Agnes Cobbs was the first coordinator of the project, which grew out of a neighborhood meeting.
That's how the Ombudsman Project came about. We found that whatever the revitalization project had planned, blueprints, change parking, all the different things, putting up street lights, etc., it wasn't answering the needs of the community. We were trying to make the people familiar with what they could do themselves, not so much somebody else do it for them, what they could do themselves.
The Harambee Community Health Center, now the Isaac Coggs Health Center after a former county supervisor, was one result of that early group's activities. Sherman Hill now leads the Harambee Ombudsman Project and says it continues to follow the pulling together theme.
What we try to do is work with the residents within the community so that they can say what is necessary for them and what they need. We were able, over the past year, bring some 300 residents together to write the neighborhood strategic plan for this community. And they identified an array of things that they thought was important for the development of this community.
The community-based organization is already working in many of those targeted areas, providing job training, crime prevention and meal programs, and other youth and adult services.
Well, if you look at the word ombudsman stands for servant, and that's what we are, a servant to the community. And I think we do a lot of advocacy for the community. I see the Harambee community growing. As far as I'm concerned, and this is my personal opinion, I think the Harambee community is the most valuable piece of real estate within the city of Milwaukee right now, because you have business in the city of Milwaukee is growing, and you know.
Growing to the north, he says, along historic King Drive. The street was renamed in 1985 at the request of local residents. It's seen as a prime location north of downtown and has already undergone considerable revitalization in recent years.
I think that things are coming back because people in the Harambee area had the vision to know that someday things were going to change. The next business that's going to be developed here, built from the ground, will be a Ponderosa. And then next to it would be a McDonald's where there'll actually be a teaching McDonald's store. Teach people how to work in business.
Many community service organizations are found here working to resolve poverty, crime, blighted housing, and other problems facing the community. In 1977, there was a network of some 100 block leaders who became the voices of their neighborhood. And Agnes Cobb says that's what's needed again.
I would love to see more people involved right now in Harambee.
Well, the key word is everybody. So the definite answer that no, not everybody's doing it together. But there's enough people doing it and building and creating until this is going to be a beautiful area. So you can see it happening. Slow, much too slow for me, but it is happening in a positive direction.